Good evening, everyone. Welcome. I'm Alexandra Lose, Head of Education for Little Sprouts, Building Blocks, and Heartworks, and I am very excited to be here with all of you this evening. Tonight, it is my pleasure to welcome you to our first parenting education series. We are so excited to embark on this journey with you as we work together to deepen our understanding of parenting and support the growth of our children in meaningful ways. At Little Sprouts, Building Blocks, and Heartworks, we know that a strong homeschool connection is a vital part in early childhood education, as it ensures that we are all working together to provide consistent, nurturing support for each child's individual development. Tonight, we are honored to have Dr. Angela Lowe with us, a renowned expert in child development and parenting. Dr. Lowe has dedicated her career to helping families navigate the complex emotional and social journeys that come with raising children. With her extensive background in psychology and child behavior, she brings a wealth of knowledge and insight that will empower you with tools you need to foster strong, positive connections with your children. We believe that this series will be a wonderful opportunity for learning, connection, and growth for all of us involved. One quick housekeeping note as we get started, please feel free to utilize the chat and question and answer function, and we will answer your questions either in the moment or at the end. Thank you all for being here tonight, and we hope you'll find this session helpful and inspiring. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Angela Lowe.
Thank you, Alex. And hello, everyone. Good evening. I am super excited to be here today. And I am also really glad that you made it too. I think we often come from really busy days. So maybe as we settle into this workshop, maybe take a moment to stretch, get comfortable, take a big breath in and a big breath out. And yeah, let's settle into the workshop. So I'd like to start with saying a little bit more about who I am and what I do. As you know, my name is Angela Lowe, and I am a professor at the University of British Columbia and a researcher at Simon Fraser University. Both of them are in Vancouver, Canada, where I live. I've spent 2 decades focusing on helping big and little people understand and grow emotional intelligence. So in case you're new to the concept of emotional intelligence, I would just want to take a moment here to share that the key idea of emotional intelligence is that emotions are at the heart of everything that we do. It sort of affects the way that we think, it affects the way that we act. So it's really important to grow the skills to recognize and understand and manage these emotions in ourselves and also in others. I want to share that I've been doing emotional intelligence work for like 25 years. And I first started when I was in Beijing, China, where I was a corporate trainer for leadership and I did leadership and management training. And I did it for 8 years, where almost every week I was delivering advice about emotional intelligence, training people on emotional intelligence, and then also ending up feeling really emotionally intelligent myself, because I was dispensing advice every day. And then I got pregnant. And I was like, yeah, this baby is so lucky, about to be born to like a supremely emotionally intelligent mom. And then I had the baby. And I can say she did not get the mother that she was promised. Somehow my emotional intelligence, it just tanked, like it disappeared. I found myself yelling at my husband. In those first few months, I found myself yelling at my mom, who was there to help. I found myself kicking the wall at 4 o'clock in the morning. And then there was one occasion I found myself yelling at my baby, and that felt so, so bad to me. And so I thought, what was going on? Then there must be something that I can do to figure this out. So then, of course, I thought maybe the problem was the child. Like if I only understood kids better, I could crack the code on children, and then, all this would go away and I would go back to being emotionally intelligent again. So being a bit of a nerd, I went back to school and I did a master's program in child development. And the key idea in child development is that children are not half adults, but they are full children, like they're fully formed at the stage of development that they're at, that they have specific capabilities or needs that are specific to their stage of development, and that adults can do something to promote this development. So I was studying this, and I want to say that this solved the problem, but it didn't. Even if I understood kids more, I was still yelling at my partner sometimes, still losing it at home. And at this stage, I had two little babies and, still feeling all the big feelings and yeah, and losing it sometimes. And so clearly, children were not the problem here. And then I started thinking, that there must be something unique about the experience of parenthood that I was not prepared for, that the people didn't prepare me for all the learning and the courses that I took. And that it was something about this experience that at times brought out the worst in me. But then again, we know that parenthood is also parenting also showed me what I was capable of. It also brought out the best in me, and it uncovered depths of love and strength and resilience that I didn't know I had. Like that I could be wiping poo after not sleeping for 8 hours and still feel so much love for my child. Like who knew? Like who knew how could that could happen? So then I figured because again, I'm a nerd, that if I just understood more about parenthood, that maybe I can figure out how to find more ease and more joy in parenting and how to hold on more often to that calm and, Angela that made good decisions. And so, yeah, I did a PhD on this. I, like and I did it with two young kids as well. I would read something at school about parenthood, and then I would pick up my two kids, and sometimes they were delightful and fun, sometimes they were grumpy and screaming. I'll pick them up from daycare, do dinner time at bedtime, and the end of the day be in tears or be in joy, and then be like, yep, what I'm learning and what's happening in my life, it totally checks out. So what did I learn? I learned that there are certain skills and knowledge and resources that parents we can equip ourselves with that can help us be resilient. Not to be perfect, because nobody's perfect, but to be resilient, which is to be able to meet the challenges that come our way, and we know there's lots of them. Um, to be able to thrive and find joy even when situations are challenging and tough, which parenthood is, right? So today I want to share with you some key learnings that I've gathered across this couple of decades that I believe can help anchor us in this hard work of bringing up good humans. And this will continue to become relevant even when your kids are grown and become teenagers, as mine are now. So that's my two kids. They are now older. Sienna is 16, Risa is 12, and then I have a little fur baby as well. Okay, let's start with talking about parenthood. Um, what have I learned? What have I learned about parenthood that I wish I knew earlier? Well, the first thing is people prepare you for a physical transition, but it's so much more than taking on a new job, right? Like it's a huge, actually, psychological transition. We are building a new identity. Many of us spend years becoming who we want to be as friends, as partners, as workers, right? Like we've had a lot of time to figure it out. But overnight, we became a parent. We have to figure out who we are as parents on the job without a manual. And it's especially hard if, like me, your identity includes being a high performer, being someone who's like a super achiever, or being someone who likes to be sure and in everything that you do, because it's just not like that in parenthood, right? It's like, psychologically who we are just expanded, and then we have to figure out what's important in this role and what's important to us while still having to be good partners, good workers, good friends. It's just a big psychological transition that we don't often have time to do. And at the same time, our emotional landscape also changes. What I learned from the research is that in parenthood, emotions are different. Most of us maybe feel more feelings, which also tend to be more intense. And why is that? because stakes are higher, right? So what I've learned is that emotions are part of our survival system. For example, when something threatens us, we feel fear, which gives us the energy to run away faster, or we feel anger, which gives us the energy to fight, right? When we become parents, our emotions become more intense because our brains and our bodies are engineered to protect our kids. So we feel more because we have more to lose. And more love equals more fears, equals more worries, equals more anger sometimes, but also more joy. Like there's just more. I wonder if that feels true for you. I hope that this is resonating. And we also feel more of certain emotions that are very much linked to parenthood. And there are these two in particular, guilt and shame, that are no fun at all. Who here feels maybe guilty more often now that you're a parent? Guilt is the feeling that we get when we feel like we've made a mistake or we are not doing what we're supposed to do. And then there's also the feeling of shame, which is the feeling we feel when we feel like we're not good enough, when we're not meeting expectations, when we're failing, when we're letting people down. So shame and guilt are intense, really uncomfortable feelings, sometimes really painful feelings. And shame is worse because it's so painful that sometimes it makes you want to run away or fight back and get defensive. And shame usually comes with these other feelings like anger or fear or anxiety, which tends to make things worse. It turns out that parents feel more of these emotions than non-parents. And the reason is because it's evolutionary. It's kind of wired into us to keep our kids close and protect them so that the species can survive. So there you go. When you become a parent, you just feel more shame and guilt. And it does make it a lot harder. Um, and also, we feel shame and guilt even when there's no need for it. I have a friend who recently had a very difficult birth, and she felt coming out of it that she's failed the birth, even though there was nothing she could do. It was a real legit feeling for her. Or when I sometimes feel bad when I'm going out on a date night with my partner, even though, I'm leaving my kids with someone that's really capable, but I feel bad. And because it feels like maybe society doesn't want us to be leaving our kids to have a good time, or it's just kind of wired into us that these feelings pop up when we're leaving them, but they're not always valid. Um, but they are there because oftentimes we feel guilty and ashamed because we think there are expectations that we haven't met. And that's the other piece I want to talk about today, too, that expectations around parenting are so high today, more than any generation before us. Today's parents, they're expected to spend more time with the kids, to do more activities with them. And parenting is not just about keeping our kids safe and healthy, but I think there is also pressure to like nurture a whole bunch of skills and talents to get them ahead in life. So it's a lot of expectations. And I think we also live in a time of internet and social media, which increases the pressure, right? Like you get advice 24/7 on what you could be doing. And social media is showing us, like, I always feel like my the food that I'm preparing is never that healthy, or other people's kids just look so clean compared to my own. So there's always all this comparison that that could be there for you to see if you were scrolling through things. So it's a really difficult landscape right now. And then on top of all this, as you are trying to manage these new emotions, navigate these expectations, you are living with a human being or a few human beings that are legitimately hard work. I think this needs to be said. Like, kids are super cute. And of course, I love mine too, but they can sometimes also be the worst roommates, right? Like, they are by nature of their developing brains pretty egocentric people who are messy, who take forever to do anything and then get really mad at you when you try to help them. Like, it just, I think it's important to acknowledge that it is hard to be living with a socially and emotionally still developing person a lot of the time. And this isn't new, right? But where many parents used to be able to tap out and get help from their family and communities, many of us today don't have our village unless we build it, right? Um, you know what, as the more I read, the more I grow, the more I've believed that the full responsibility of raising kids was never meant to fall on just one or two shoulders. For a long time in the history of humanity, communities raise kids together. But today, I think what's more normal, especially in the West, are nuclear families, and you can sometimes feel like we're expected to do everything ourselves. And then on top of all that, I thought I'd add this too, that we are living at a time where the world is changing so fast, right? Um, Technology, AI, like just lots of things happening in the world, and the future is uncertain, and that also adds a level of stress. Okay, I feel like maybe I've managed to depress everybody a lot, I know, but I think it was important to kind of paint this picture of what it is to be a parent today and to let you know that if you are struggling, that you are not alone. Um, so this is a report from the US Surgeon General that came out last year. And I think there are lots of great things about this report, but some startling stats as well. And for example, it shows that almost half parents say that most days their stress is completely overwhelming compared to adults who are not parents. And this is a significant problem because when stress is prolonged or severe, it can increase the likelihood of mental health challenges. And it's a societal problem because the mental health of parents and caregivers can have a profound impact on society, right? Yeah. So I wanted to start with this by simply trying to put across the point that if it's feeling a little hard today, if you're stressed, you're worried, struggling a little bit, that you're not alone, that it's not you, you're not failing. It's just that modern parenthood is asking a lot of parents. So what can we do? Um, Yeah, I think this is why sometimes parenthood can bring out the worst in us as well as the best in us. And what do we do with all this info? I think first is, as I was saying, just know that you're not alone and be kind to yourself. Show yourself some compassion, know that it's not you. And we can talk more a little bit about this today as well. And then also know that it is, be curious about the shame or guilt that you're feeling. I have actually, we won't be able to talk too much about this today, but I have a website on understanding parent shame, which I forgot a .com on the bottom, but that's somewhere that you can go to find out more about shame. That's actually my PhD dissertation. But today I want to focus on other aspects. And the other thing to remember is that we can lean on our village. It's always okay to ask for help because, again, we were not really meant to be doing this alone. And finally, and this is the crux of today's presentation, I think it's really important to simplify. We lived in a fast-paced, rapidly changing world with too much information. I know that when I'm worried about something with my kids, like something about a behavior that's showing up or maybe screens and screen use, for example, I will look out there and there are like 1,000 things that I should be doing or should not be doing, right? Like, so it could be really overwhelming. And I think times like this, what we need are anchors. Like some certain parenting anchors that we know to be true, to be valuable, to resonate and have meaning to who we are as parents, that we can drop anchor and can stop us from just tossing about in the storm and help us to keep us grounded while we figure things out. And then we can keep going the way we want to go once the storm passes. So today I want to share with you some really helpful core strategies that helps to anchor me in my parenting. And yeah, there's going to be 3 anchors. So, okay, let's go. The first anchor is identifying what matters most. As a parent today, there's so much info, and sometimes they're conflicting. There's so much we could be doing and should be doing. There are many approaches to parenting: positive parenting, gentle parenting, dolphin parenting, lighthouse parenting, and there's so many activities that we can sign our kids up to do. So my first anchor is about taking the time to identify what matters most to you as a parent, which I find really helps me cut through the noise and all the expectations that are out there. It's really being thoughtful about thinking, what do we want most for our child? What are the qualities and the skills that they need to get there. Like what do they really need to be successful? Is it academics? Is it sports? Is it some certain other skills? Just kind of really being thoughtful about that. Now, from my childhood, I think that my parents thought that this was the recipe for success. This was what was needed for success, that kids needed to be quiet, they needed to be listening, they needed to be in a classroom in order to learn, and they needed to be obedient. And I mean, even as I'm looking at this picture now, I sort of feel like this is a little creepy. I don't think that kids were ever meant to kind of be like that. Um, and so, for me, I feel that success looks more like this. This is like one of my favorite pictures in the whole world. It's an old one, but I haven't found one that I liked more. And it's a child who is, so engaged with the world, right? Like fully involved in the world, is happy and is able to feel joy when there is joy, receive love when there is love, and be able to cope and thrive even in, like difficult situations. And so that is more the picture of success for me. So maybe I'll take a moment to pause now and give you a minute to think, and maybe even writing down, like what do you want most for your child? Intuitively, what is the most important thing, and what do you think they need in order to be successful in their lives? And I'm going to also show you a video because sometimes it could be a little tricky to start thinking about that. And so here I'm going to share a video, which is prepared by the Dalai Lama Center for Peace and Education in Vancouver. And it talks about educating the heart. And I think it really kind of comes to the piece about, what else is important? What else do we want to learn? So, okay, I'm going to play the video now.
When a child is born, we do everything we can to protect them, nurture them, love them. A child's heart and mind are fragile. As they grow, we want to teach them everything we know. We send them to school to fill their minds with wonderful knowledge, to give them the tools they need for life. At school, they get a taste of what things are like in the world outside. There is friendship, romance, disappointment, embarrassment, discrimination, and bullying. But are the tools we give them enough to prepare them for this world? We have an enormous responsibility and an amazing opportunity. If we truly want to prepare them for the world outside, we must also educate the heart. Because to navigate the world outside with compassion, acceptance, and tolerance, we need to teach them compassion, acceptance, and tolerance. This can begin in our schools, and it can start today. It can happen at hockey practice, dance class, at day camps, and music lessons. And it's already happening around the world with astonishing results. If we want our children to grow into socially and emotionally capable young people, we must ask for a balanced education that puts importance on educating both the mind and the heart.
Okay. Yeah, I really like this video because it can sort of help get us thinking about what is needed, what else is needed to help kids navigate their lives successfully. Actually, I'll pause and maybe I'll ask Alex, did people put in anything in the chat at all in terms of what matters to them or not? Any of that is okay.
So there's nothing in the chat. I see a few hands raised, and I'm not sure if that was just to agree with something from earlier or if they had a question. But if you do have a question or a thought, please feel free. We are getting some thoughts in the chat here, providing unconditional love, be themselves and don't stop, even if you don't feel accepted, kindness and empathy.
Ah, fantastic. Thank you. I might park those for now and we can circle back to them at the end. But yes,
Yes,
that is
and
the kind of thing.
curiosity is another one that just came in. And
Excellent.
resilience.
Yes, resilience, curiosity, amazing. Thank you,
Yes.
Alex.
Yes.
I'll keep trucking along because I know, like, I just have so much I want to say to you today, but keep those coming. I think those are really helpful ideas. And so I also want to share that groups of researchers and educators, this is a conversation that has been happening for a long time in the field. People are asking themselves, what are some universal skills and qualities and values that are common across people who enjoy sort of well-being and success in their lives? And they've identified some key qualities. And so I want to offer you two frameworks to kind of think about as you are sort of coming down this path of identifying what really matters. Okay. So here are two frameworks that have been created. And the first one is it's called social and emotional learning broadly. And it's been created by a group of scientists, educators, to essentially be able to name and categorize certain skills and qualities that are linked to success. So, as you can see in social and emotional learning, they feel like if we can have skills in self-awareness and self-management, in social awareness and having these ability to create good relationships with others and have the skills to be able to make responsible decisions, then, that is really a recipe for success. And and then I also share with you the other framework that we use quite a lot in Vancouver, which is called the Heart Mind Wellbeing Framework. And I like this one because it's kind of really intuitive, and it's saying that if kids can feel secure and calm, if they're able to be alert and engaged in their work, whether it's at school or a project, if they're able to get along with others and be compassionate and kind and have these abilities and understanding to solve problems peacefully, then that is going to really help promote their well-being. So the good news is, with these two frameworks, that there is a lot of research now that actually links children who have these skills. They are over time actually doing better in school, doing better in secondary school. They have more friends. They have better relationships with teachers. And then so even followed them into the early 20s, where they find that kids who enter kindergarten with with good skills in these different areas are better employed. They, just report a higher satisfaction with life. So they're kind of sticky. Um, I offer these frameworks because I think that it's helpful because it gives words and things, give words to things that we don't value enough, but we know are essential for mental health. And I think a lot of us, it resonates with a lot of us in terms of what we know are important for succeeding and being well in life, right? For me, they're my anchors. They're one of my anchors because I think I don't know what jobs my kids are going to have at this stage. I mean, I have friends who have jobs I didn't even understand existed. But what I know is this. I know that they will need to work with people as they get older. I know they will need to do hard things and be able to persevere. I know that things will happen which are hard and they will need to be able to cope with them and bounce back. And then we all know that having relationships is one of the biggest pieces of our happiness and well-being. So then I know that these qualities here are going to help prepare them for that. For me, these are roadmaps to well-being that are evergreen, and they help me kind of cut through the noise and really focus on what matters. Like, for example, maybe you didn't manage to do any reading with your child today, or maybe you didn't make a home-cooked meal. But maybe you took your child to a play date where they practice sharing, waiting, taking turns with somebody else. Or maybe you did something kind together with your kid, like you checked in on a lonely neighbor or you thanked the bus driver. And all this has great value. All this is valued. Just because we haven't traditionally valued them doesn't mean that they don't have value. And because it's educating the heart, it's preparing them to succeed. So all I'm saying is that when we have frameworks like this, and yours doesn't have to look exactly like this, you can kind of just make a list of what really matters. Then we know that, in the face of a lot of different expectations and a lot of noise, we have an opportunity to look at this and go, actually, this is what matters. This is what I'm going to put my time to. All right. I'm going to leave this aside now, but you can see that at the bottom, there are those two websites, and they're really great websites. You can go there and you can actually find different strategies and tools about how to promote each of these different qualities. In case I'm stressing you out about more things that you feel like you need to do, I will also add that as you know, teaching skills is not the only way to promote social and emotional learning or heart mind well-being. In fact, especially with the younger kids, it is most of the work comes from relationships and environments, not from the skill teaching, but what they are kind of soaking in through the relationships that surround them and also the environments that they have. And I also say that the competence and self-care of the adult will play a far bigger role in this, especially in the early years, than actually teaching of skills itself. Okay. All right. I'm on to my anchor two. So here, the anchor two is focusing on relationships. Um, I found this really helpful that when there's a lot to do or you don't know what to do next, um, if if you focus on nurturing the relationships, that's always valuable. It's always good to do. And it doesn't just provide short-term benefits in the moment, but it really sort of grows that relationship and provides long-term benefits. There's lots of research that shows that having trusting relationships are a key ingredient for learning, problem solving, resolving conflicts, for health and well-being. And this is true for adults and also with kids. But especially for the little ones, relationships have the added function to help them feel safe, and feeling safe and connected actually does most of the work in helping them grow all these other skills, whether it's academic or social and emotional. And the reason for that is secure relationships or relationships where they feel safe function as a secure base from which the young child feels safe and has the courage to venture off and explore and learn. But then if something stressful happens, they know they can also run back to this safe haven, and that they will be supported, right? And this is how, as a secure base and a safe haven, how relationships function as a driver of all sorts of growth in the early years. And I think as adults, we can get a sense of that too. It's sort of like as an adult, it's knowing someone has your back. Like when you know somebody has your back, you're more likely to go out and try something new or do something brave, because you know that if it doesn't go well, you can come back and there will be there's a place that you can feel supported, right? So that's why relationships really matter. So then what does it mean to focus on relationships? It's about strengthening the connection between you, to recognize that the relationship or the connection is an entity on its own, and there are things that we can do to like enrich and nurture and strengthen it. The first thing I'll say is layering on the love. Anything you can to show the other person or child that they are unconditionally and fully loved. Like saying, it can be words, saying a lot of I love yous. It could be actions, lots of hugs. It could be sending little notes in the lunchbox, putting little notes in different places. I think of every time that I show an act of love, that I'm sort of padding out this jacket that they get to wear as they go out into the world, this jacket that keeps them warm and help them be brave, as they head out into the cold. So that's a metaphor that I like. The next one is connecting before you direct. Connect before you direct. It's an idea that comes from Gabor Mate and Gordon Neufeld, two well-known child psychologists. And basically, the big idea is that it's really helpful to have a moment of connection before we start getting kids to do something. And this is especially important after a period of absence. So, for example, after they've taken a nap first thing in the morning, or when they've just come back from daycare, just having a moment to connect with them before directing them. I'll give you an example. Like when my kids come home from school, even now, they are they've had a tough day, and when they get home, they're throwing their bags on the ground, they're taking off their jacket that's on the ground, and sometimes they kick off their shoes and it's everywhere. And I, being someone that likes kind of being neat and tidy, every part of my being just wants to go pick up the jacket, like put your shoes away. But if I'm thinking about connect before I direct, then what I'm doing instead is I'm saying, oh my God, I'm so glad you're home. I missed you today. It's so good to see you. And then I take a moment where I hang out with them, talk to them about their day if they want to, or if not, we just hang out, have a drink. And then I say, can you please hang up your jacket, put away your shoes. And really what that does is it fills their connection bucket because all of us have a need for connection. And it shows them that they are more to me than the mistakes that they make, you know? Okay, so that's one thing I want to leave you with. And the third one, and I think that this is the cornerstone of emotional intelligence and social intelligence, is being able to recognize emotional needs. So what this means is here, every interaction with another person, whether it's an adult or a child, takes place on two levels. There is the level that you can see and hear, and then there's the one that's underneath that you can't. And actually, the one that's underneath is really important because it's driving the behavior, even though most of us tend to pay attention to the one that we can actually see. I'll give you an example. This is an example with an adult, but maybe you'll resonate. A couple of days ago, I was having a really bad day. I woke up late in the morning, and then as a result, my kids were late going to school, and then I was late going to a meeting, and it sort of was that kind of a snowball where it snowballed into just a kind of a yucky, crappy day where things just weren't working well, and I was always sort of just trying to catch up with the day. And then at the end of the day, my husband came home, and I said to him, you know, oh, it's been a really crappy day. You know, I mean, this went wrong. I was late, you know, I got up late and then this went wrong and then that went wrong and the kids were like this. And so it's just been a terrible day. And then you know what he said? He looked at me and he said, oh, well, you know what you should do? You should maybe get up a bit earlier. And you can imagine that did not help at all. It did not make me feel any better. In fact, it made me feel worse. And you know, it ended up making everything worse. But he thought it was helping. So so what's happening there? Like he saw a problem, he wanted to help me fix it, but I didn't need him to fix a problem. What did I need? I needed him to say, "Oh man, your day sucks. That sounds like a really hard day." Um, and that would have just made me feel so much better. And then we could just kind of get on with it. Does that sort of thing sound familiar? And maybe you see what I'm getting at? We all have needs that are sometimes invisible, but universally, humans have needs to be seen, to be understood, to be loved, to feel connected, to feel validated for their experiences. And the thing is, when our needs are not being met, we usually feel resentful, we feel angry, we get more annoyed. And until the underlying need is met, the behaviors and the feelings sometimes continue. And I think this is true of adults, but also of kids. Like I remember during COVID that I would be working in my room and the kids will keep coming in and they always have problems. They need this, they can't find that. But when I stopped and I thought maybe they just need some attention. And I sat down with them for 10 minutes and then suddenly they're off and I don't see them for a couple of hours. So the skill here is to kind of think, what's the underlying need? And how can I meet it? Because we can't always fix all the problems, but in most cases, we can, to a great extent, meet emotional needs. I hope that's making sense. I hope that's resonating. So how do we put this into practice? Okay. Some ways to meet emotional needs. Notice if they're feeling something. If, you know, sometimes kids' feelings can be really obvious, but sometimes it could be really subtle as well. Maybe they're just quieter than they are usually. But I can tell you that the more obvious a feeling is, the more you need to address it, because it doesn't go away until we do. And, you know, sometimes I'm guilty of like, oh, I don't want to deal with this right now. But I also know that if I don't, it'll just keep continuing. And maybe we know this ourselves as well, right? Like when we are angry, we almost need somebody to see that we are. And if they ignore us, it actually gets bigger. So sometimes having feelings acknowledged, like, oh, I can tell that you're a little worried about this, or I can tell that something is bothering you. I wonder what that is. I wonder if you're feeling kind of mad at this. Sometimes just having these feelings acknowledged can take the energy away behind that feeling and come to a calmer place that we can find a resolution. The other one is to ask open questions and keep an open mind while you're at that Like maybe you said you didn't understand what I'm saying. Can you tell me more? And then doing active listening as well as we are asking questions. And this is maybe sometimes reflecting back what we've heard. Like it sounds like you were trying to tell me something, but you felt like no one was listening, you know? So reflecting that sometimes can help to calm that emotional brain down as well because you feel seen and validated. Although I'll also say that it's not always possible to do. Like, to be honest, most of the time I just practice half listening, but I do try to do active listening because it is an act of love. And then it's validating experiences, even if you don't agree with the behavior, it's possible for us to say, yeah, I get it. I get why you're mad. Like, probably if that happened to me, I would be mad too. Or that it is frustrating that you can't have what you want. Sometimes when we validate, the other person calms down, which can, just brings them to a place where they can hear us better. It doesn't mean that we're condoning the behavior. And finally, just this piece that we all have a need for autonomy and choice. And if it's possible, providing choices like, you want to go leave now, or would you like to leave in 3 minutes? Do you want to put on your green coat or your blue coat? Just something like that that feeds that need for autonomy. Okay. That's my second anchor, just remembering to focus and strengthen connection. And then now I'm on to my last anchor. And this one, I'm just looking quickly at time. Yeah, I need to do my last anchor now, and this is our last one today. All right, I have to admit that there are so many anchors. I actually have enough for a 12-week course that I teach over here. But for our 1 hour today, I really had to do a lot of soul searching and kind of think, what is the most important thing? What are the most important things, right? And I believe that this one here is actually the most important one because it has the potential to bring out the best in us as parents. I can share more parenting strategies with you, but if you don't feel well and your batteries are not charged, it won't matter. Because most of the time, it's not that I've realized it's not that we don't know what we need to do, right? But we have trouble doing it in the moment. Now, how do I know this? Because this is exactly me. Like every day, I wake up with the best of intentions to be kind and nurturing and to kind of put into practice all these things that I know that are going to be great for my kids and me. But I end up snapping at my partner, snapping at my kids, and then feeling really bad about it and getting mad at myself, which makes things worse. I'm sharing this because I think I'm a really good example of how you can know so many strategies for being an emotionally intelligent parent, but it doesn't always translate into action. I know that when I'm stressed or exhausted or unhappy, I don't have access to that part of my brain that makes good decisions. Now, I also know that this is true for everybody because there's brain research that shows that. It's just the way we're wired. Brain research shows that people who are stressed, there's a lack of sleep, exhaustion has a direct impact on this part of our brain called the prefrontal cortex. And this part of the brain manages our ability to focus, to regulate our thoughts and actions, and that affects, obviously our ability to make good decisions, right? It's just how we're wired. When we're tired, we can't access this part of the brain. So when you know what you need to do and you can't do it, it's not a reflection of your flaws or that you are a bad parent. It simply is really that you just need to rest and fill yourself up because your batteries are depleted. Okay? That's why looking after yourself is a part of looking after everybody else. I love this little picture. Someone sent it to me after a presentation, and now it sits in front of on my bathroom door, and it says, "My time alone is for everyone's safety." And that is so true. Like you're not doing this for yourself; you're doing it to protect your ability to care for everybody. So like self-care is not selfish; it is part of the work. Okay, so how do we put this into practice? Let's start with being aware of how we're doing. I think some of us kind of just go through such busy days that we often don't realize how we're doing inside. Um, yeah, so the first question is, how full is your battery? And maybe just kind of mentally think to yourself which one of the batteries you are. Green is where our best selves live. It's like the place where if my kid spills a giant glass of milk, I'm like, that's okay, honey. We all make mistakes. Let's clean this up together. That I'm able to do that. Red is not so much. Okay. Then the next question is, well, how do you know when you're running out of batteries? And this is really important because this is self-awareness. And it's really helpful to kind of think to yourself and note it down. What are some signs that your battery is running low? Now, I've done this in workshops all over the world, and I'm going to share some of the responses to you, and you tell me if they resonate. So people say, "Oh, I know when I'm running empty when I get grumpy, when I start doom scrolling and I can't stop, when I can't focus, when I can't people anymore." That's something one of the parents told me. When I make bad decisions, I'm tired and I just want to lie down. I make more mistakes. I get yelly, and that's how I know my battery's running low. I kind of get mean to myself and to others. Yeah, so I wonder if any of these resonate. But if it does, and it certainly does with me, I think we can all agree that this state isn't great for doing very much, right? And certainly not for parenting, which is, as we've discussed, really, really difficult intentional work. But many of us are used to just pushing on, right? Like we say, we can do it. We can take more on. Yes, let's do another play date. Yes, let's bake more cookies. I can do it. Until you end up, someone spills the milk and you're like, this, why did you spill the milk? Which is something that I kind of did kind of often. Yeah, so let's take a moment to reflect on this. And there's a really good parallel. Your phone. If your phone is low on power and it stops working or it starts glitching, you don't yell at your phone. You don't go, come on, keep going, phone, right? We don't. We say we just recharge it. We don't attach any stigma or thought about it. We just charge it. So I'm gonna say the same to you, that when you find yourself snappy or on edge or feeling exhausted or unfocused, don't resist it. Don't get mad at it. Just treat this as signs that your battery is becoming depleted and you need to recharge. And then you do the counterintuitive, right? Like you focus on yourself, you charge up. So how do we do it? One, just want to remind you, self-care is not selfish. People think of self-care as a zero-sum game, right? Like you can either care for others or you can care for yourself. But really, they're part of the same thing. If you focus on your own well-being, you end up having more resources that you can use towards the well-being of others. And I like this picture. I think, this is an especially important concept for parents because a lot of the times this is what we're doing. We're the bottom rock kind of just holding up everything. And, I can only do it if I'm in balance. All right. So that's the other thing I want to say. Do self-care. It doesn't have to be big or complicated. At the very basic one level, just take care of your soft animal body. You have an animal body. Remember to eat good food, drink, rest, and move. This is what animal bodies need. Getting connected with others has been shown again and again in research to be a way that we can that brings us energy and joy and is part of, like how we feel good and be well. So maybe just check in with a friend, call somebody, go for a walk, just connecting with other people. Cultivate self-compassion, something that I started with today, knowing that just be kind to yourself, knowing that when you fail or make mistakes, it's not you, but it's part of common humanity. Like we all do it, we all make mistakes, and just being aware if you're not being kind to yourself and change the record. Okay. Take time to do something you enjoy. Doesn't have to be big. Take a walk, drink a nice cup of tea. I have a little candle light next to me here, and it's part of my joy. Or just do nothing. Just like sit and stare at the wall. Okay. I want to just quickly do one more thing. Like I am looking at the time, but I think this is super, super important. So one more strategy for self-care. which I find is so helpful and really helpful to do in the early years of parenting, which most of you are at now, I think. And it sets you up well for the teenage years, which is where I'm at the moment, a lot more complicated. Why? Because with the younger kids, this is a time where there's a lot of joy that's available because your kids are still cute. And there's lots of challenging moments too. But there is a sort of a well of resources from which you can draw joy. Now, I want to share a strategy with you, and this is based on neuroscience. So we now know that our brains are actually wired for negative thoughts. We are far better at noticing negative things than positive things because our ancestors relied on this to survive. Like they needed to know where the dangers are and remember that so that our species can survive. This is called the negativity bias. Um, and it's something like, if one bad thing happened today, but 10 good things also happen, you're more likely to remember the one bad thing that happened and ignore the 10 good things that happened, right? But this is not, so we have a brain that is like Velcro for bad experiences, but like Teflon for good experiences. But what a problem is here is that the more we focus on the negative, the better we get at focusing on the negative. So the more we allow ourselves to focus on the negative, the better you are at like finding the things that are not working or the risk or, like all that kind of thing. So now we know too that the brain is plastic. There's this thing called neuroplasticity, which means that our brains are actually constantly changing and we can shape our brains with what we choose to focus on. So this strategy is called growing the good, which is that it's intentional training of the brain to make it more familiar with happiness. And how do we use joy to grow a happier brain? So this is a practice. It has some research behind it, and it shows that it actually sort of works for raising the set point of happiness. One, don't let the good fun things get by you. Like notice when they're happening. And to me, like I think maybe it's um, the first cup of coffee in the morning, when the sun shines on my face, a beautiful flower, but also with my kids, when they smile at me and their teeth are too big and they're goofy, or, a certain way that their hair sticks out and it makes me laugh. Just moments like this, like little moments every day. And instead of rushing by them, notice when they're happening and marinate yourself in them. And what this looks like is like you stay with it. You enrich it. You go, man, this is so funny, or this is so good, or this is hilarious, or something, just kind of stay with it and feel it for at least 5 seconds and you can kind of absorb it in a way. Now, what this does over time is that it starts to wire a brain that is more familiar with the good in your life. And so as the kids grow and as you grow, that is actually a way of self-care. Like I think of it as expanding the battery that you have so that you have much more space. You have a fuller battery from which you draw from. All right, I'm coming to the end, but maybe I can invite you to put in the chat one thing that brings you joy so we can all sort of share things and have a library of things to pull from. Okay, key takeaways. Parenthood is hard. Be kind to yourself. Lean on others when you have them. Simplify by identifying what matters, focusing on relationships and connection, and then remembering to charge your batteries. Okay? Okay, so just if you want to keep connected, I have a website, angelalow.com. I have a newsletter that I send out kind of every month with tips and strategies and new topics that I think of. And then I also have a website that's all about shame if you're interested.